today I want to show you how to throw an altered vase. So this vase started out round on the wheel, and then I altered it and added a bottom, and then I added some little embellishments. And so I'm just going to show you today how to throw this piece. Let's get started. Okay, this lump of clay is 2 pounds, and I'm doing the video from a little different angle today, so hopefully you can see my hands a little better. It has been weighed and wedged, and it is ready to go. So let's get started. So I'm just going to raise the piece and lower the piece. This just helps center it. And when you do this, if you're new to throwing, I always use this part of my hand, the meatier part, right? Because that's the stronger part. So raise with that part of your hand, and then lower also with that part of your hand. And that is good. So I'm just going to compress the top so we can start our opening. I use both thumbs to push down. Once I make an opening, I like to grab my sponge. I don't throw with a lot of water. I've mentioned that before. I used to throw only with porcelain. Porcelain doesn't like water. And so for this piece, when you open it, you want to go as far down on the bat as you can while leaving a very, very, very thin layer of clay. The reason I suggest leaving a very thin layer of clay is I've done it before where I go all the way to the bat, and what happens is when you start to pull the piece open, it rips right off the bat. So I'm just compressing all the way down, but just leaving a minuscule amount of clay. And I'm actually, when I cut this off, I will show you. So compress your rim, and then we can begin our first pull. Make sure when you're pulling to pull all the way through that rim. You don't want to have a thick rim. That really starts, when you do that, that's how you get your piece off-centered. It's one of the ways, right? So we're going to do another pull. Just get ourselves all set up for that. And I always say when I pull, you know, your outside hand, your fingers are below your inside fingers. And it's like people in an elevator riding up. Just keep pulling. Compress. It's a little wiggly. I'm going to teach you how to get rid of that. So if you have that wobble, what I like to do is to balance it out, I do this thing that I was taught it's called the throw down. It just kind of untorques the clay. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but it does really help. You can go back up. And now it's nice and it's pretty centered. Take your hands, I like to collar it just a little. And that last pull was actually better than I intended, so I don't have to do a lot more. Let's check the thickness. It's pretty thin. I don't want to take too much more. Okay, so some final prep details. I have my trusty wooden stick I like to use to clean up excess clay. It's like wet trimming, if you will. And then I'm gonna take my metal rib. It's very dirty. Before you throw, you don't, like if you don't want lines in your clay, you know, you want your rib clean. We're just gonna take the rib. Clean up the outside. Again, if you want throwing lines and all that, it's totally fine. Just don't do this stuff, you know? I'm just trying to make it as straight as possible, so once we distort it, it won't be as distorted. It won't flare out and also be oblong. Okay, so I'm just gonna gently compress that rim. So now we're gonna cut it off, and where's my towel? I need my towel. This curves in just slightly at the top. I want it out a little more. So we have our wire tool. I'm gonna pull it, and it ripped through the bottom. Now normally if you're throwing and you rip through the bottom, that's bad. You want it to rip through the bottom if you're doing this technique. It just makes it easier. Okay, so then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take, this is drywall. I'm gonna turn the wheel off so I don't have any accidents. I'm gonna pick this up. I'm gonna set it here. I'm gonna start to wiggle it. And then technique I just started to use is I take two smaller boards and I'm gonna squish it together. Let's see, so that you can see this. This way I know it's even, right? And then gently release one. And I think this one's stuck. Is this board stuck? No. This board's stuck. I haven't had it stick. That's okay. All right. So you got the idea? And so now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna set this in the sun, and then we'll come back in a minute and put a bottom on it. The piece that I threw has been sitting in the sun. You can tell, like, it's not squishy like it was. And I wanted to show you the bottom, how it rippled when I cut it off the bat. That's perfect. So it was thin enough that it tore through. That's good because then it's easier to alter. So at this stage, what I like to do is set it upside down and just trim that excess clay out, because we're going to be putting a bottom on this, so we don't need this. And I like it pretty thin because I am going to come back in here once we attach the bottom and put a coil in here. So, okay, so that looks good. Now what we need to do is you need to have a slab. I rolled the slab out. What I like to do is just take this, set it on the slab, and then I trace a line on the inside. I'm just going to use my knife, trace a line on that slab. And the reason I do the inside is because I'm not going to cut it flush on the outside. So you can see there's that line. I'm going to flip this upside down. And what I do, I attach things a little differently than most people. I don't use, grabbing some water. I don't use any slip, I just use water. And it works fine. And it doesn't mess, it's not as messy. I actually don't think it cracks as much because there's not a bunch of added moisture. So all I do is I take my needle tool and I'm just gonna draw a deep line in the middle. Now the theory, I'm gonna tell you my theory behind this. As this deep crevasse closes, as it dries, it shrinks in, right? And so the theory is that it's going to grip the slab. So what I like to do when I score the slab is I go in the opposite direction. So instead of scoring around like I did this, I score like this. So it's almost like, it looks like cilia, like on a cell, like on an amoeba. So you're just gonna make an amoeba, okay? Next, what I do, this is all I do. Is I take my brush, I get it wet, I wet this, and take it, put it down on the slab, and you just really apply pressure. Pressure is gonna be your friend. And you can tell, just wiggle it, but gently, right? We don't want to distort our pot. Next, I just cut some of the excess off because I need to work with this a little more. I'm just going to set that to the side. Pick this up. Okay. It's really, you can see it's attached. So when I'm compressing, I shimmy to the side and I push down. Okay. You can do it this way. Shimmy down, shimmy down. Just a little shimmy, push down. So you can see inside, you can see on the exterior. Then I flip it upside down and I take my pony roller. Now the first thing I do is I just go over it with the flat part. I don't try and do it that far. That was a little aggressive. And then this kind of shows me where the line is from the vessel. And then I take the tapered part of the pony roller and just lightly go over that. That's also nice because it makes a little indent here so that when you have your vase finished and it's sitting, it won't rock. So now we flip it back over. And this is bigger than I normally do the foot. So I'm gonna put it on the banding wheel. I'm just gonna show you. Put it on the banding wheel, and I'm gonna cut this down, trim this down. So I don't need all this extra. I leave this here so it can shrink, and I usually leave it overnight like this so it can shrink, and it works. Like I don't have any cracking. I've done this to cone 10, no cracking. Okay, so now what I want to do briefly is I want to make a little coil. I'm just going to set this aside. Right, we can roll our little coil. You know, if you have one of those little handheld extruders, feel free. Now, what I do, if you want a nice perfect coil, you twist it. Like if it gets lumpy, just twist it and kind of roll it out again. Okay, and this clay is very moist, so I don't need to work. Normally I would dip this coil in the water and then put it on the inside, but now I'm just going to put it on the inside. Don't know if you, this piece is so narrow, I don't think you can, even if I held it up to the camera, I don't think you could see it, but I'll try. And I'm just feeling down there, and I just cut it off with my finger. That's good, that's fine. The piece that's in there, I'm just gonna work around with my thumb. I'm gonna put this back in there. As I cut the coil off with my thumb, that means my fingernails are a little too long, at least to my liking. I know there's some potters that have long nails, and that's totally fine. Okay, just a little more. I'm just gonna pinch it off and then just smooth it out. And I'm trying not to push down too hard on the bottom because it's wet. Okay, so you can, I don't know if this is gonna focus in, but you can see down that I put that coil in. Okay, so now we're gonna let this sit overnight. I'm gonna show you how to finish the bottom. Okay, we are back and the piece is set up. Now I told you earlier that I let it set up overnight, but it is so hot out that I just let it sit since this morning, and it's good. It's not flexible, so it's good to cut. So what I do is I set it down. This would actually be perfect if you had a cheese cutter. I know some potters sell their own versions of cheese cutters. I have one, but I don't know where it is. So I'm gonna show you the non-cheese cutter version with a knife. Pretty simple. So I'm just gonna take my knife, and I'm gonna cut this excess clay off as close, as flush as I can. Doesn't have to be perfect, we'll clean it up. And just cut. Right, and then we can just take that off. And, oh, it's stuck, it's okay. It's actually pretty flush. That looks pretty good. It's hanging over a little here. So all I'm gonna do is take my rasp and just, let's see, these are called rasps or Sureforms. This is the Mud Tools version. Make sure you're going the right way. I was not going the right way. That'll leave a little texture. You can smooth that out. So it just leaves like a little grainy kind of texture. So what I do is I just take my rib, metal rib, smooth it out. Stoneware, so you're gonna get a little lines that it's gonna drag that manganese. The manganese is what makes the speckles on this stoneware. And then what I like to do is take a very damp sponge and clean up this edge. And then I take it, and to finish that edge, oh, that's still, I didn't see that, that's a little rough right there. Just smooth that out. For what I do, the texture down at the bottom doesn't matter as much because it'll get covered up with transfers, but just to show you, just smooth it with your thumb. And then to finish this bottom, what I like to do is just take the piece and rock it So it gives it a nice little lip. And I just go over it again with my thumb. Also, if you have a non-stable glaze, a glaze that likes to drip or run, that kind of helps catch it a little. And make sure it's got that little pop. And there you go. You have your altered vase. Thanks for joining me. Pottery's better with a pal. So if you like this video, like, subscribe, or share it with a friend. We'll see you next week. Bye.